Yes.
Hi there, TCC. Welcome to the video series for writing, reading, research, and transferable skills across the disciplines. My name is Yasmin Shahal, and I teach in the Writing Studies program. I'm joined today by our lead tutor, Lindsay, from the Writing Center.
Hi.
And today we're interviewing Beth Acken from Chair of Paralegal Studies.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so our first question is, tell us what is your favorite course to teach, and what is one fun fact about you?
Sorry, you froze in the middle of that, but I think I got it. As far as what do I teach, I am the chair of the Paralegal Studies program. At this point in time, I'm teaching the introductory course, which is Paralegal Fundamentals and Ethics. In addition, I have taught the Research and Writing 2 class. I will be teaching the Legal Technology class this year, and I also supervise the interns in the Paralegal Studies program. As far as one fun fact about me, I am the parent of 2 children, one who is just taking a job in New York City, and my son is a sophomore at Montana State, and both of them took classes at TCC as they were getting their education.
Nice. A TCC family. We love it. All right, so our second question is, for students taking a class in your discipline, what would you like them to know about writing, reading, and research in your field? Does writing, reading, and research play a role in your teaching?
Absolutely. For paralegals, you will be doing reading, writing, and research. That is a major component of what paralegals do. And so writing is something that is integral in every single course that we have in our program, because as a paralegal, you will be writing on a daily basis. You'll be writing to clients, you'll be writing to expert witnesses, you'll be communicating with the court. And so you will be doing lots of different types of writing where you're communicating with other people, but you'll also be writing internally, and you'll be doing writing where you're writing memos to attorneys that you work with. You may be writing motions and drafting pleadings. And so writing is something that you will be doing absolutely every day as a paralegal. So you have to enjoy writing, and you have to enjoy the precision of writing. Because you're writing for a court system, they are going to be looking for grammar, sentence structure. And those are such an important key because they help you create meaning. And that way there is no confusion as to what is being said. And as you know, lawyers kind of like those in-between spaces that create confusion. And so you're, as a paralegal, you're going to look to avoid those so that your meaning is always clear. In addition to writing, you will be reading, and you will be reading things that are legally complex. And so you're going to learn to read statutes, you're going to learn to read case law, and then be able to apply that to other facts. Let me see, reading, research, and research kind of, stop, you'll edit that part out for me. Thank you. So the research component also plays into the paralegal field because paralegals have to research statutes, they have to research case law. And so that requires them to have a specialized knowledge that they develop in our writing and research classes, where they can find not only state and federal statutes, but local rules of court. Because Washington is a really unique state in that every single county gets to create its own rules of court, which means that, and every court system within that county, meaning Superior Court, District Court, Family Court, get to create their own rules of court. So you spend a lot of time having to research those local rules as well as the state and federal statutes and case law.
It's a lot of knowing your situation, adapting to it, a lot of just understanding that there's not one way to do something, but you having that conciseness. You know, I tell my paralegal students that too. It's like you have to have that preciseness. Don't give too much room for, debate. All right. So let's see. Our next question is, what does effective writing, research, and comprehension look like in your field?
Sorry, that just opened up. All right. In my field, effective writing is precise writing. It creates meaning, but it doesn't leave room for misinterpretation. And so rather than descriptive with lots of adjectives, it's very factually based. It also requires synthesis of information. So being able to take large quantities of information, whether those be medical records, whether those be case law, and be able to synthesize those down and then use them to make a point. The most effective paralegals are the ones who can read and interpret that complex data and information, and then be able to use it to the benefit of the client and to be able to make an argument that is effectively supported by the research that they have.
Gotcha. Can you give us an example of what's an effective factual report versus something that's not?
Absolutely. One of the things that sometimes a paralegal will be asked to do is to write a demand letter. A demand letter is a letter that goes out when there is a lawsuit asking for the case to be settled for a certain amount. And you'll see sometimes that there will be attorneys who will send out something that's like one paragraph. You know, our client was injured, pay X. And that's less effective than someone who knows the facts of their case can describe the injury in detail. You know, if you can give a description of the injury and the impact that injury has had on someone's life, as well as provide some of that supportive case law. You know, in past cases, you know, a jury awarded X, you know, and in that particular case, the injuries were similar, the effects on their lives were similar. Being able to make that person come alive on the page and be able to articulate their loss without being dramatic, without kind of fudging the details, really is what makes the difference between someone that's an effective writer and someone who is less effective. Because the other side that reads that letter, if you can make that person come alive and make that person seem credible and what happened to them realistic and something that resulted in a need for compensation, then they're going to be more willing to do that versus a one paragraph, my client was injured, please pay.
I really like the idea of just credible sources. That's what our students are going learning about this week, is that if you don't have what I call good friends, good sources,
Right.
It's your argument, what you want to get across is not going to happen effectively. So it's nice to hear that, especially validating to know, like, if my students move on into paralegal studies, that having, you know, saying what you need, but having the, you know, credibility of the sources and the history, as you said, like, have some history to back up what you're trying to convey. So that's really validating to hear.
I had this knowledge during your description because after I got out of college, I spent a year as a legal secretary, and that's what I did. I wrote demand letters, and it is kind of a balance between making sure that everything is factual, so they can't dispute it, but also you're trying to work in empathy in there without really. You have to be tricky about it.
You have to do it without that overt pathos where you're trying to play on someone's emotions, because you're dealing with lawyers, and you know there are jokes about whether or not lawyers have hearts, but so you have to be able to do that and make them seem like a realistic person and somebody that's relatable without kind of tipping that scale into dramatic language. And it's a really fine balance that paralegals walk in writing these types of letters.
It's effective writing is very important. It's like being precise. That's what I hear.
Absolutely.
So our next question is from Lindsay.
Yes. So this is for students and for tutors. What do you recommend to students that are struggling to understand writing, reading, and research in your field? Is there anything specific you want our tutors to know about your courses? And what can tutors do to empower and help students feel confident navigating your classes?
So one of the things that we start out with is explaining to students that if you are someone who is in need of a career where you have absolute certainty of what you are doing and how everything is going to play out, you probably don't want to be in the legal field. Because the reality is that everything that you do in the legal field is something that is new. It's a different client, and the facts may be similar, but they're not going to be exact. In addition, because there are so many laws, so much case law, so many statutes, so many rules of court, you're never going to know them all. And so as students begin to learn to write and they make that transition from like English 101 into the paralegal studies program, one of the things that we want them to understand is you're going to struggle for a little while you learn this whole different language and you figure out how to write for legal writing, because it is different than what you've done up to this point for most people. And so it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel like you're struggling a bit. That doesn't mean you sit and struggle and feel like, oh no, I'm not going to ever get this. You know, our instructors are very open to students coming to talk to them, but we also encourage students to seek out outside sources such as tutors. Even tutors who don't have legal training can provide you great information in regards to grammar, sentence structure, whether or not your meaning is coming across and is it accurate. And so it's really important to recognize the strengths that tutors will bring. One of the kind of the best examples I had is that as a student, I would take my work to a tutor who had no legal background, but they would give me feedback on sentence structure and paragraph structure so that I could make those corrections. And then I could go back and focus in on, am I making my legal argument strong enough? And so it's recognizing that you need that English background, that grammar, sentence structure background, but you also will need to learn that legal side of a subject matter. And you're never going to know it all, even when you leave. And so it's okay to be uncomfortable and expect that you will be uncomfortable in this particular career. So as far as tutors, one, we love the feedback you provide our students, but also being able to tell the students, it's okay to be uncomfortable in this program. You should expect to be uncomfortable because you're learning. And no matter what, and no matter how many lawyers think that they're amazing and brilliant, none of them know everything either. And so it's just keeping that in mind, that you will learn as you go and as you develop as a paralegal, depending on the areas that you practice in. But even as you become an expert, you're still not going to know it all.
Yeah, I think being able to adjust frequently is so important. So this next one is about skills. What foundational skills would you like students to walk in with? What do you wish you had known when you had started writing, reading, and research in your field?
As far as foundational skills, I've kind of talked some about those already. You need a strong foundation in being able to write in clear sentences and in paragraph format. One of the things I would note is this is very different than, I had a student in particular who liked telling stories, and there was all of that flourish and details, and that can be used, but it has to be curtailed back slightly for a legal audience. And so just recognizing that your storytelling has to be told to lawyers, and that is a different audience, because judges are lawyers. They just kind of moved up the ranks. So who you're writing for almost always are going to be lawyers. And so just figuring out how to do that in the language that is used. As far as formatting of documents, the style that is used is called Blue Book in the legal world. It's something that is completely unique. It pulls a little bit from APA. They actually do use parts of APA stylistic format for non-legal sources, but for their legal sources, it's a citation format that you will learn in our classes. As far as what did I wish I knew when I started out in my field, I guess I wish I knew that it was okay to be uncomfortable. One of the things that I have the opportunity to do is to talk to our interns who are at the end of the program. And so you see them make that jump from what am I doing in a classroom to trying to apply it in a work setting. And inevitably, every one of them comes back and they're like, but we didn't cover this. I don't know how to do this. And as much as we're going to do everything that we can to prepare them, there are going to be things you're going to learn on the job. And that was true when I left law school. I thought, okay, I've got all of this great knowledge. I've passed a bar exam. And yet that is a very different thing than actual practice. You know, I had 2 days of training and I was handed 200 cases and sent to a courtroom. I learned on the job, and you're going to make mistakes and it's okay. And so giving yourself some grace and recognizing that just because you don't get it the first time doesn't mean that you're not cut out to do this job. It's whether or not you can take feedback, incorporate it, and do better the next time that demonstrates your strength in the legal field.
I really like that, the idea of just learning a new language. It's one that's already hard in itself, and then being that uncomfort, sitting in that uncomfort is, I would say, students have a hard time with that. So it's really nice to hear that's the advice, is like, it's okay. You're cut out for this. But to cut out for this, you gotta be okay with like feeling those emotions, right? So I really appreciate just hearing that.
And being comfortable with feedback. It's really hard. All of us kind of, none of us like having negative feedback.
Yeah.
But the reality is if you're able to incorporate that feedback, then you do the job better next time. And that's what makes you an effective paralegal, is figuring out who it is you are writing for, who you're doing your work for, and how is it you can effectively do the work for them for the benefit of the client.
Yeah. I would think that with paralegal, like, especially in the law field, it's like your audience is everything. So their feedback, their reaction, and just, you learn a lot from that experience. And if things didn't go well, if you're, like you said, if someone's doing too much narrative and there's so many places to, oh, but what about this? It's like, you're going to learn from that, and that's okay. So.
Absolutely. And every attorney has different expectations, and there's more than one way to do almost everything in the legal field. So knowing that just because you learn something one way in the classroom from, either an instructor who is a lawyer or a paralegal, doesn't mean that when you get out there, you won't learn a different way to do it. And that's okay. There's more than one way to get there. I had a conversation with a paralegal who works for a firm that has 30 different attorneys, and he's a senior paralegal there. And he said, what led me to kind of make the jump to senior paralegal was the ability to listen to 30 different people and figure out what each one of them needed when they asked me to do something.
Yeah. And that's like advocacy in itself right there, right? Learning like, hey, how do you bring all these people on the same page? And that I always talk about advocacy. So it sounds like in paralegal studies, like you're basically the advocate, not just for the others, but you're trying to predict how you can like gain that how you buy-in, if that makes sense, if I'm on the right track.
You are on the right track. Paralegals cannot practice law because they don't have a law license. So they always have to work with an attorney. And at first, when you tell attorneys that when they first come out of school, they kind of like laugh and they don't think of themselves as a team. But the reality is attorneys, as they go along, figure this out, and paralegals do also. That it's a relationship where they need each other.
Yeah.
Good attorneys can rely on their paralegals to give them that support to do more work, to do better work for their client. And paralegals, because they don't have a legal license, need to work under the supervision of an attorney who has that greater depth of knowledge in that particular subject matter. And so it's really this interesting relationship that is completely dependent on good communication.
I love that. That actually goes into the next question where we transitioned nicely. Look at us. So our next question is, how do you learn about or ask students to reflect on the prior knowledge your students bring to your course? How do you help students identify and describe the knowledge that they learn in your course might be relevant to other contexts, especially as they move through the academic pathways and into the workforce?
So how they reflect on their prior knowledge and as far as what they bring into the classroom is usually in that fundamentals class. One of the first things we start doing is taking a look at what are the skills, and not just skills, but also traits. What are the things that are going to make you successful as a paralegal? And we've touched on some of them. Precision. Timeliness is a big one because the court has rules in regards to when everything is due. And so we start to make a list. And what I do is have students reflect upon what it is they already have. Because everyone comes into the paralegal program with some of those soft skills, or even with some of those already developed skills and traits that will make them a successful paralegal. Some of them coming from classes that they've taken, some of them that they've developed from jobs they've already had. And so it's a recognition that coming in as a paralegal student, you already have some of the things that you need to do and to be successful in this career. As far as making that move from the academic pathway into the workforce, as I said, we have an internship class. It's actually a mandatory class. And so every student has to find and complete the internship class, which is a 5-credit course. And they intern 132 hours in that quarter. And as part of that course, they're also doing reflecting work and group discussion work with the other interns so that they're hearing from each other what's going well, what people are working on, how are you handling this situation, who else can give you some advice because they've already addressed this. And they're doing two things. One, they're helping each other survive that internship as they're making that transition to apply those academic skills into a real world situation, but they're starting to build their network too, which is a huge benefit in the legal field. Most legal communities are small. Even in a city the size of Tacoma, the Pierce County Bar Association is a small, it's not small as in number wise, but it's small in that if you ask somebody about in that group about an attorney, if they don't know that attorney, they know someone who knows that attorney, and the same goes for paralegals. So at the very beginning of your career, you don't necessarily realize how important it is to have that support network within a community. But this allows them to begin to see that. This support network that exists in that class allows them to rely on each other to deal with some of those little issues that come up in your first job or your first internship. And so that's one of the ways that we really work to make sure that students can take the skills that they're learning in the classroom, move on to an internship where it's low stakes. You're not going to lose a job for the most part in your internship, and then practice so that then when you're ready to apply for a job, you've kind of got some of those skills under your belt and you're more comfortable.
I like that idea. It's community. It's like it takes a village, right? As they always say. And that networking piece, I don't think we talk much about that in the classroom. And I really like how that's a big part of the program where students can be like, hey, I'm trying to get through this situation. How do you see it? And that goes into what you said earlier is, being in a room with, being in a place with 30 other, attorneys and understanding how they think. It's the same thing. It's that nurturing that community. So I really like hearing that.
And it fits well within kind of promoting what it is to be a paralegal, because the reality is the best legal teams are ones that truly work as teams. If you come in thinking you're going to be an independent lawyer with no support, you're not going to do as well as a group of people, because each person brings their unique strengths, which in turn allows you to do more, to be a better team on behalf of whatever client or governmental entity you represent.
Yeah, it's that adaptability that, again, just how can you talk diverse people, diverse ideas and all of that. So that really makes me kind of feel validated as the writing center instructor, because we want that diverse communication in those processes. So that's nice.
Absolutely.
Right. So the next question is from Lindsay.
Yes, so we're shifting over to AI and the role of AI. What does the role of AI look like in your classroom? How do you see students using AI effectively? And does your industry require that students learn to use AI tools?
So the one thing to know about the legal field is they are slow movers in regards to adapting to things like technology. AI has come up in the legal industry. Unfortunately, it's come up in pretty negative ways. A couple of attorneys turned in a legal brief, and attorneys, when they submit a legal brief to the court, they sign it stating that it's true and correct, and they have done the research. And a couple of them submitted something to a court where they used ChatGPT to write their brief, didn't bother to check the cases. One of the cases that they cited turned out not to be a case. It was something that generative AI created on its own, and it didn't state the accurate law at that point in time. The judge figured it out, and both of them were sanctioned by their state bar. They received fines in the tens of thousands of dollars area. And so at this point in time, what I would say is courts are not looking to use something like a ChatGPT or a generative AI. And in fact, we discourage students from using it in the classroom, because at this point in time, what we need is for students to develop those writing skills on their own. I don't need ChatGPT to write it for me, because at this point in time, what we know as far as a lot of generative AI, they're not necessarily willing to share where they're getting their information from, which then leads to issues of credibility, which then impacts whether or not what you're putting forth to the court is true and accurate, which puts your attorney in a situation where their license is impacted. So for the most part, we are not using generative AI or anything like ChatGPT in the classroom. Where I see AI kind of coming in, I think it will come into some of the, what I call the administrative part of the job, as far as being able to input things like names, addresses, and pull all of that information together and put it together in a way that is succinct and can be used for filling out formulistic sort of documents that go along with court documents. But as far as a large role in our program, for right now, we actually discourage the use of it because we need students to learn the writing skills and the reading skills so that they can do the job as a paralegal outside of the classroom.
I really appreciate that, because it's really going into the idea that you have to do the critical thinking on your own. And, you know, if you do what those lawyers did, you're putting yourself at a very, very like risky place, and in your integrity and all of that, the hard work that you put into it. So it sounds very scary, and it should, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's lives and having that factual information. So I'm hearing factual information, credibility. It's very integral to the work that you do. So it's like, you're going to put your name on something, make sure it's yours.
Well, and attorneys have to follow a code of ethics. And while paralegals don't have a license, if you're working for an attorney who gets suspended or who gets disbarred, you're out of a job. And so it behooves you as a paralegal to work with your attorney as a team to make sure that everyone is practicing ethically. And as I noted, you know, the practice of law is small, people talk. And so it's better to have that reputation, especially at the beginning, and you're wanting to change jobs or, you know, go for a promotion. You want to have that reputation of being ethical.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So our last question is, anything we didn't ask that you want to cover, or anything you would like your future students to know?
I always say this so that students hear this in our program. Some students come in with the idea that you can go to law school directly as a paralegal, and law school requires a 4-year undergraduate degree. The paralegal studies program is not. It's an associate degree, or it's a certification if you already have a specific degree. So you cannot practice law as a paralegal. Every state has rules in regards to that. It's called the unauthorized practice of law, and it is a crime. So I always want to make sure that paralegal students know what the limitations are before they want to come into this program. As far as for writing and reading, the reality is this is a job that you will do a lot of reading and writing. It is integral to the job. In addition, group work is integral to this job. And so if you are uncomfortable or you don't want to work in groups, that you might want to consider something beyond paralegal studies, because the reality is you're going to have to work with other people. You're going to have to work with clients and attorneys and judges and expert witnesses. And so it does require those strong writing skills and strong communication skills to do the job effectively.
Thank you. So before we end here, I just wanted to ask Lindsay if she has anything else. I feel like I've learned so much about paralegal studies, and we're so thankful that you took your time to be with us today. And Lindsay,
I so appreciate. Oh, good. Sorry, Lindsay. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no. There have been a number of things that you said that like make a lot of sense to me, and one of them is that you do have to think on your feet. Not only are there big rules and local rules, but those local rules can change as well. So you kind of have to rely on everybody in your group to be able to collaborate. And the other thing is clarity. I think clarity is like, it's good in every kind of writing, but I think it's especially important in legal writing.
Absolutely. And I think I would throw in there, you can't be afraid to ask questions, because that's, as you noted, things change every year. We have this giant book that comes out with all the local rules for the state of Washington. It has every county in there, and it updates every year. And so you have to be comfortable asking questions and saying to an attorney, hey, you know, I'm comfortable with this, but I don't necessarily understand what you're asking for here. Can you clarify? And just that ability to communicate, admit what you know, but it also admit what you don't know. That's what makes for such a strong team. And so that is something that I always say to students. It's okay to ask questions. It is absolutely okay. It's highly encouraged. It's the paralegals that don't ask questions that make attorneys nervous, especially in the beginning. So until they know that you have that team mentality down. So, but I want to thank both of you, for an opportunity to talk about our program and the writing we do in here, because we so love having the support of the Writing and Tutoring Center. And so thank you, Lindsay. And we so love having the support of having students come through a solid English 101. So I know how important your job is too, Yasmin. So thank you both for for giving me the opportunity to speak to both of you.
I know, thank you. And I really appreciate what you said about asking questions. I have a few paralegal students and they're like, do you think I'll be okay in paralegal? I'm like, because you ask questions? Absolutely. And I'm like, you have a great chair in Beth Acken who's going to take care of you. So for students listening right now, just really know that you're going into a really good program and you're going to enjoy it. And just like Shed, ask the questions.
Questions, yes. So
All righty. Well, I'm going to stop recording and then
okay.
what?